What if Japan's most feared ninjas weren't just assassins, but victims of a curse, a bloodline bred for shadows, hunted by emperors, betrayed by allies, and nearly erased from history? Who were the Iga Ninjas? What secret did they guard? And why did their legacy have to be destroyed? Stick around, because the truth is darker than the legends. Deep in the heart of Japan, nestled between steep mountains and thick forests, lies Iga Province, a land so rugged and isolated it practically wrote the book on secrecy. There were no wide roads here, no imperial armies marching through, just mist-covered valleys, winding trails and a population hardened by solitude. For centuries, this natural fortress shaped its people into something different, something dangerous. Out of Iga's remote terrain emerged warriors unlike any the world had seen before. The Iga Ninjas. Forget what Hollywood told you. These weren't sword-flipping, smoke bomb-dropping action figures. The ninjas of Iga weren't fantasy. They were survivalists. Their skills didn't come from some secret martial arts scroll handed down by shadowy masters. They were born from necessity, real, bloody, everyday survival during Japan's most chaotic centuries. While the samurai fought over honor and glory, the Iga Ninjas mastered guerrilla warfare, deception, sabotage, and infiltration. Why? Because honor doesn't matter when you're outnumbered 10-1. The earliest roots of ninjutsu trace back to the 12th and 13th centuries during the Kamakura period, but it was during the 15th century Sengoku period, a time of total civil war, that the ninja truly evolved. Iga wasn't alone in this. The neighboring province of Koga was training its own shinobi warriors. Together, the Iga and Koga clans became the two major powerhouses of the ninja world. Sometimes rivals, sometimes allies, always dangerous. These clans developed ninjutsu not as a spiritual path, but as a tool of war. They learned to move silently, disguise themselves as monks, farmers, or merchants, infiltrate enemy camps, steal information, poison water supplies, and disappear without a trace. Their battlefield wasn't a field at all. It was the night, the forest, the shadows. When a castle needed to fall without a siege, when a letter needed to vanish mid-delivery, when a general needed to die without a fight, the shinobi answered. What made them even more unique was their background. Many Iga ninja came from lower classes, peasants, ronin, and even Buddhist monks. These weren't aristocrats born into privilege. They were outcasts, misfits, survivors. People the rest of society ignored them until they needed them, and that made them unpredictable and highly effective. In a rigid culture dominated by the samurai code of Bushido, the ninjas were rebels. While samurai pledged blind loyalty to their lords, ninjas pledged loyalty to success. Survival came before pride. If that meant retreating instead of dying bravely, so be it. If that meant hiding instead of fighting head-on, even better. Their strength wasn't in brute force, it was in thinking 10 moves ahead and doing the thing no one else would dare. And here's the thing, being a ninja wasn't just a job. It wasn't a title you put on a resume, it was a way of life. Your training started young, climbing, running, blending in. Your family, your village, your elders, all part of the same network. Everyone had a role, and if you betrayed that role, you didn't just lose a mission, you endangered the entire clan. Trust was everything, silence was survival. In Iga, every rock, every tree, every shadow could be a weapon. They turned nature into camouflage, misinformation into protection. They studied the terrain like a living map, and if outsiders came too close, they vanished, just like that. So when people talk about ninjas like they were mythological ghosts, that's only half true. The truth is scarier. They were real, and they were better than anyone else at staying alive. But that's also what made them a threat. One powerful enough that Japan's rulers would later try to wipe them out entirely. Because if you can't control what hides in the dark, you try to destroy it. By the 15th century, Japan was unraveling. The central government had collapsed. The emperor held no real power, and rival warlords battled non-stop across the country in what became known as the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period. For over a century, chaos reigned, but in the remote valleys of Iga, that chaos became an opportunity. While the rest of Japan was setting castles on fire and slicing through armies with katanas, the people of Iga took a different approach. They didn't pick sides. They sold their skills. Their weapon wasn't brute strength, it was intelligence. Literally, warlords came to Iga for one thing: espionage. Need to know what your rival is planning? Hire Iga. Need a castle burned down without a siege? Hire Iga. Need to make an enemy commander mysteriously disappear in the middle of the night? You get the idea. The Iga shinobi became infamous for their tactics, ones that most samurai considered dishonorable. But make no mistake, they worked. Dead drop messages hidden under rocks or tree bark, night raids where enemies were taken out silently, poisoned arrows, burning enemy food supplies, and fake letters to stir up confusion. They even used psychological warfare, spreading false rumors, forging orders to turn allies against each other, and disguising themselves as servants, monks, or entertainers to sneak behind enemy lines. The battlefield was their chessboard, and they always played 3 moves ahead. Their success wasn't built on numbers or swords, it was built on a tight network. The Iga weren't an army in any traditional sense. There were no ranks, no uniforms, and no single warlord commanding them. Instead, they operated like an invisible web. Decentralized, independent, and nearly impossible to infiltrate. Leadership came from councils of elders, respected shinobi who had survived years of missions and carried the collective knowledge of the clan. The strategy was shared orally, and training began early. Kids weren't just taught how to fight, they were taught how to listen, to disappear, to become shadows. And because they weren't tied to any daimyo, they weren't bound by the politics that constantly shifted alliances across Japan. They worked for whoever paid them, sometimes even both sides of the same war. That made them unpredictable, flexible, and incredibly dangerous. Even hardened samurai trained in honor and swordsmanship feared the Iga. Not because they couldn't beat them in a duel, but because they never saw them coming. Their reputation grew across the country. Feudal lords admired them, rivals feared them, and commoners whispered about them in awe. A single Iga ninja could tilt the outcome of a battle without ever drawing a blade. But this growing power came with a cost, because while independence made them strong, it also made them vulnerable. They had no political protection, no army to defend their territory, and no noble family shielding them. Just their skills, their secrecy, and their land. And in a country obsessed with control, that kind of independence was unacceptable. If there was ever a man who hated unpredictability, it was Oda Nobunaga, the ruthless daimyo known as the Demon King of the Warring States period. He had one goal: unify Japan under his rule. No more rival clans, no more freelance warriors, no more chaos. And in his eyes, nothing represented chaos more than the Iga ninja. You have to understand, Nobunaga wasn't just building an empire, he was building an order, one where every daimyo answered to him, every warrior wore a crest, every battle followed his rules. But the Iga, they answered to no one. They sold their skills to the highest bidder. They knew every forest path, every escape route, every trick in the book. Worse, they had no allegiance, no lord, no interest in kneeling to the new regime. That made them dangerous. In 1579, Nobunaga decided enough was enough. He sent his son, Oda Nobunaga, to crush the Iga. It was supposed to be quick, a formality. March in, take the villages, install order. But the Iga weren't an ordinary enemy. They didn't meet Nobunaga in open combat. They ambushed him. Using traps, night attacks, and guerrilla tactics, the Iga turned the mountains into a death maze. Nobukatsu's forces were decimated. Embarrassed, he limped home. For most leaders, that kind of defeat might have meant negotiations, or at least caution. Not Nobunaga. In 1581, furious and determined to erase the stain of failure, Nobunaga launched a second invasion. But this time it wasn't a raid, it was an extermination. He sent a staggering 44,000 troops into the mountains of Iga. Samurai, arquebusiers with European muskets, horsemen and siege experts. The mission was clear: destroy Iga. Do not conquer it, not tame it, erase it. Burn the villages, kill the warriors, leave no one behind. What followed became known as the Second Tensho Iga War, a massacre disguised as a military campaign. The Iga fought back, hard, but they were outnumbered, at least 10-1. Their traps, their terrain, even their stealth, couldn't match the sheer scale of Nobunaga's assault. Villages were burned to ash, forests were torched, entire families were wiped out, not just men but women, children and elders. Anyone who carried the blood or knowledge of Iga shinobi was marked for death. The mountains, once silent guardians of the ninja, became mass graves. And yet not all were killed. Some Iga shinobi vanished into the shadows, blending into the forests, disguising themselves as farmers, monks or wanderers. Others fled south, taking refuge with allied clans or becoming mercenaries for hire. A few even went east toward the rising power of Tokugawa Ieyasu, a name that would become critical in the next chapter. But for Nobunaga, the job was done. Iga was in ruins. The central authority had won, and the message was clear: defy the emperor and vanish from history. And this is where the curse begins. Because after that brutal campaign, strange things started happening. Nobunaga's fortunes began to shift. His most trusted general, Akechi Mitsuhide, would betray him just a year later, leading to Nobunaga's death at Honnoji Temple in 1582. Some whispered it was divine punishment. Others believed the Iga survivors had a hand in it, operating from the shadows, enacting revenge in the way only ninjas could. Truth or rumor, the legacy stuck. A superstition began to grow. Those who destroyed Iga would themselves be destroyed. That no matter how many soldiers you send, how many villages you burn, the shadow never truly dies. The Iga ninja, or what remained of them, weren't just seen as warriors anymore. They became ghosts, legends, and in some circles, a curse. The idea that you could wipe out a people who were experts at not being seen suddenly seemed naive. Over time, Iga became more myth than memory, a burned-out land with a name that made generals flinch, and yet the ninja style, the tactics, the secrets, they survived, passed down in whispers, hidden in scrolls, and even absorbed into other clans. You could destroy their home but not their legacy. After the fires of Iga were extinguished and its villages turned to ash, a strange silence settled over the land. But that silence didn't bring peace, it brought fear. Whispers began to spread, even among the victorious. The Iga weren't just defeated, they were cursed. According to one of the most persistent legends, a vengeful monk who had trained among the shinobi cast a final curse as the last temples burned. His chant wasn't for survival, it was for retribution. It wasn't directed at Nobunaga or his soldiers, it was for anyone who dared erase the Iga name from history. From that moment on, the survivors would carry not just knowledge, but a shadow they could never escape. And oddly enough, strange things started to happen. Survivors who fled to distant provinces met sudden, violent ends. Some were betrayed by their own clients, their identities exposed and hunted. Others simply disappeared, their bodies never found. There were stories of madness, of shinobi who locked themselves away, convinced they were being followed. It wasn't a clean exile. It was as if the bloodline itself had turned against them. Some historians chalk this up to trauma, PTSD, isolation, and the mental toll of being constantly hunted. But in Iga itself, the people spoke differently. They believed the ninja had opened doors that should have stayed shut, that their rituals, their sacrifices, and their mastery of deception had crossed spiritual boundaries, and the price of that power was spiritual debt. Others suggest a far more grounded explanation. Tokugawa Ieyasu. After Nobunaga's death and the fall of his successor, Tokugawa rose to power, eventually unifying Japan under the Edo shogunate. Unlike Nobunaga, Tokugawa respected the shinobi. He had even relied on Iga and Koga agents during his early rise. But here's the twist. While he employed many ex-ninjas, he also systematically erased others. He didn't want rogue agents operating freely, so some were hired into secret police units and the rest were quietly silenced. To the public, ninjas faded into folklore. But behind the scenes, Tokugawa had them working as spies, assassins and bodyguards. Some historians believe the curse was really a cover for political cleanup. Rogue shinobi were hunted down by their own brothers who had joined the new regime, betrayal disguised as fate. And yet, not everything can be explained away. Even today, the region of Iga Ueno holds on to a peculiar atmosphere. There are villages deep in the forest that are completely abandoned, yet locals swear they occasionally hear movement in the woods. Some say the old training caves echo at night. Those dogs refuse to go near them, that people go in and feel like they're being watched. Not ghost stories, warnings. Old families still pass down cursed scrolls, ninja manuals said to bring misfortune if read without proper lineage. Some are locked in chests, bound with rope, stored in attic altars.
No one touches them.
Temples across modern-day Iga have a different kind of visitor. People don't come to pray for good fortune. They come to leave offerings, coins, incense, even folded notes. They leave them in hidden corners, not at the main altar. When asked why, they say the same thing. For the forgotten. No names, no prayers, just silence and reverence. The Iga may have been scattered, but they weren't erased. When Tokugawa Ieyasu rose to power, he did something unexpected. He didn't just tolerate the surviving shinobi clans, he hired them. The very empire that once tried to annihilate the Iga was now quietly built upon their skills. At the center of this twist in history stood one name, Hattori Hanzo. Hanzo wasn't just a survivor, he was a symbol. Trained in Iga techniques from a young age, he had already served Tokugawa during his rise to power, guiding him through dangerous territory and rescuing his family during one of Japan's most volatile periods. By the time Tokugawa unified the country, Hanzo was indispensable. And where did Tokugawa place him? Right at the heart of his new power, Edo Castle. This wasn't ceremonial. Hanzo and his fellow Iga operatives were assigned to protect the shogun's life from within. They didn't wear armor. They didn't guard the front gates. They watched the walls, the shadows, the servants. It was internal protection, counterintelligence. A full-time job, ensuring no one ever got close enough to draw steel. Hanzo oversaw the construction of secret passageways throughout Edo Castle. Rumors still swirl about ghost doors, hidden panels that allowed a shinobi to appear or vanish in an instant. Some say certain floors creaked in only one direction, so even a silent intruder could be tracked. Others whisper about ventilation shafts large enough to crawl through, hidden alcoves above meeting rooms, and dead-end corridors designed to confuse assassins. Edo Castle wasn't just a palace, it was a trap, designed by the very people it once hunted. And the assassination attempts did come. Not all were recorded, but there are stories passed down in guard scrolls and oral tradition. A poisoned meal intercepted just in time, a spy disguised as a maid who vanished before questioning, and a would-be killer found suffocated in his sleep with no sign of forced entry. The shogun never gave these men official praise. Their roles were kept deliberately invisible. Ieyasu understood the value of a hidden blade, one that worked best when no one knew it was there. So while samurai generals were immortalized in ink and inkstone, the shinobi who protected Japan's most powerful man were deliberately left unnamed. Yet, among those in the know, Hanzo became a legend, not just for his skills, but for his paradox. He was a warrior of shadows protecting the brightest throne in the land. His family crest was stitched into the lining of guard uniforms worn only inside the palace, never seen by the public.
Even the gate near his post at Edo Castle, now famously called Hanzomon, serves as a ghostly reminder. The ninja was real, but his legacy was meant to stay hidden. And perhaps that's the most ironic twist of all. The Iga were nearly wiped out for being too dangerous, too independent. But in the end, their survival didn't come from open rebellion or fame. It came from becoming essential to the system that once feared them. They weren't just ghosts haunting the shogun's castle. When most people hear the word ninja, they picture the Hollywood version: smoke bombs, slow-motion flips over castle walls, and flashy sword fights on moonlit rooftops. It's cinematic, sure, but it's also mostly fiction. The real ninja, especially those from Iga and Koga, were nothing like that. They weren't acrobatic assassins in tight black suits. In fact, the best ninja didn't even look like fighters. They were monks, farmers, street performers, and merchants, slipping in and out of enemy territory by pretending to be part of the landscape. If they did their job right, you never even knew they were there. Forget the backflips. The true ninja skill was disguise and patience. They could spend days just observing, taking note of guard rotations, listening for passwords, studying terrain, and learning how servants entered the kitchen. Many missions involved no combat at all, just infiltration, surveillance, or stealing a critical scroll. They could sneak into a castle, steal a battle plan, and be gone before anyone noticed a thing. In some cases, they'd even plant false information, sabotaging the enemy without a single sword swing. The tools they used weren't magical, but they were clever. ninja carried ashiko claws strapped to their feet to climb trees or walls. They used makibishi, spiked caltrops, to injure pursuers during a silent getaway. They packed blow darts, sleeping powders, poison-tipped needles, and even fire arrows designed to start small blazes as distractions. One of their favorites, small containers of pepper powder or ash thrown in an attacker's eyes. Not exactly a smoke bomb, but very effective. Their strength wasn't in brute force, it was in not being noticed. One classic tactic involved faking betrayal. A ninja might pose as a disgruntled samurai, offering to switch sides in exchange for money. Once inside the enemy camp, they'd vanish with maps, schedules, or secrets, leaving chaos in their wake. Other missions required psychological warfare, rumors whispered in town, false sightings, or planted supernatural signs to intimidate enemies before a single blow was struck. Secrecy wasn't just a strategy, it was survival. Being identified as a ninja could get you executed even by your own side. That's why the Iga and Koga clans developed rigid internal codes. Many ninjas used alias names or performed jobs only known to a single superior.
Some operated in pairs, with one shadowing the other to ensure success, all to eliminate them if captured. In rare cases, ninja families even erased their own records, hiding skills for generations in case persecution returned. So, where did all the myths come from? Mostly the Edo period, ironically, when the ninja were least active. Peace meant less demand for espionage, but more demand for entertainment. Ninja stories became kabuki plays, woodblock prints, and folk tales. The ninja was no longer a real person, but a symbol, mysterious, deadly, and unstoppable. And then came the West. Pop culture twisted the myth even further, turning disciplined spies into cartoonish warriors with magic swords and laser focus. But the truth? It's far more interesting. Because while samurai lived and died by honor, ninja lived and survived by information. And once you understand that, everything about the ninja makes more sense, not just what they did, but why they were feared, and why so few left stories behind. By the time Japan entered the Meiji Restoration in 1868, everything changed. The samurai class was abolished, the shogunate collapsed. The feudal system that had defined Japanese society for centuries vanished nearly overnight. And with it, the world that had created the ninja was gone. There was no more need for covert spies or shadow warriors. Ninja families, especially those from Iga and Koga, were suddenly without purpose, and worse, under suspicion. Many chose to disappear. Some changed their names, adopting more common surnames to avoid scrutiny. Others retreated into the mountains, living as hermits, monks, or simple farmers. A few turned their skills into legitimate professions, becoming martial arts instructors or bodyguards. But the art of ninjutsu, that began to fade. No longer protected by feudal lords, and with no wars to fight from the shadows, the remaining ninja clans became folklore. Their skills were passed down in whispers, family scrolls hidden away or destroyed. Some bloodlines continued the training in secret, but without a need for missions, much of the knowledge was lost or fragmented. Today, you can visit places like the Iga Ninja Museum in Mie Prefecture, built near the heart of where the Iga clan once ruled the shadows. Visitors can walk through hidden doors, try on ninja costumes, and even watch reenactments of old techniques. It's part education, part performance, and part myth. Because while the exhibits preserve the legend, the truth of who the ninja were is still hard to pin down. And yet, traces remain. Modern DNA tests have uncovered rare lineages in parts of Japan, with families claiming descent from Iga warriors. Some even retain old manuscripts or family traditions they believe trace back to the shinobi code. But these are fading fast. As generations move forward, and the last living ties to the feudal era vanish, so too does the memory of the real ninja. And maybe that's the most ninja ending of all. Not a dramatic fall, but a quiet exit into shadow. If you've ever seen a ninja hurl a smoke bomb and vanish, leap across rooftops, or slice through enemies with supernatural precision, you're not alone. The ninja boom that exploded across the West in the 1980s and 90s turned the shadow warriors of Iga into Hollywood icons. From comic books and anime to arcade games, and big-budget movies, the image of the black-clad, mask-wearing super assassin became a permanent fixture in global pop culture. But the truth? The real Iga Ninjas were closer to CIA agents than action heroes. They didn't wear flashy outfits or carry katanas on their backs. They wore disguises, monks, farmers, merchants, and gathered intelligence. Their weapons were often simple tools adapted for stealth, and their missions revolved around psychological manipulation, infiltration, sabotage, and silent takedowns. It was patience and planning, not swordplay, that made them effective. And surprisingly, the Iga legacy didn't just survive in pop culture, it influenced actual warfare. During the Cold War, intelligence agencies around the world studied historical ninja tactics. Military handbooks referenced ninjutsu strategies, not for their flash, but for their effectiveness in guerrilla warfare and espionage. US Special Forces and even Russian Spetsnaz units trained in stealth, misdirection, and close-quarters infiltration techniques inspired by traditional Japanese manuals. In fact, the Iga clan's centuries-old methods of gathering intel, blending into hostile environments, and destabilizing targets without direct confrontation are now mirrored in how modern-day operatives plan deep cover assignments. But here's the strange twist. While history shaped pop culture reshaped history. Thanks to movies, anime, and video games, people all over the world became obsessed with ninjas. That global fascination revived interest in Iga and Koga history, funding museums, research, and even archaeological digs. In a way, the myths created by fiction helped preserve the facts buried in old scrolls and fading oral traditions. So while the Iga clan may no longer stalk the night, their legacy continues in the stories we tell and the tactics we still use. And that's all about it. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up, and if you like more updates, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell icon so you don't miss any videos and get notifications on time. Don't hesitate to give suggestions for our videos. See you in the next one.